Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Gardening with Daddy Pete. I'm Melvin York.
And I am Jay York.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And today we're going to be concluding what we did last week, and that is all about lawns, the different seeds, the different types, the different regions here in North Carolina, which we have three, which is the mountain region, we have the Piedmont region, we have the Sandhills coastal area, and go on. And Jay, I think you want to remind everybody something before we get started here.
Yeah, before we get back into our lawns and everything about green this morning, don't forget, wherever you're listening this morning, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have questions, if we don't answer them today, definitely feel free to leave us a comment. We always appreciate everything that we can do. Helps us grow. We help you grow. That's our slogan here at Daddy Pete's. So yeah, whatever you have for us, feel free to leave a comment and we will dive into it, and it might be featured here on the podcast.
Yeah, and another thing too, you can go to our webpage, which is daddypete's.com. If you'll look on the front of our webpage, on the homepage there, it will take you to our YouTube videos. It'll also give you, you can go through to our podcast, our recent podcast, to look for something that you may be wanting a question answered. It may be already in there. If not, there's a place there that you can ask that question, send it in, email to us that way, or shoot it in, and we'll get back to you. If you do want to answer that way instead of not on the podcast, just leave me an email address or a phone number, and I do answer all those calls, and we'll get back to you. So we're talking about lawns today. We did a segment last week giving you the different varieties of grass seed that works well in the three regions of North Carolina. And I'm sure if you live in Virginia or in South Carolina, Georgia, wherever you may be listening from, if you go to your state extension page, ours is North Carolina Extension Service, and your extension usually goes through your land-grant universities, and everything and all the information. They give you the trials they've done and has been, again, tried, tested, and true. They gave the information, then share it with the community, with the public. So it's something that they know works. So you want to stay with that if you can. So you'll have success the first time when you're planting a lawn. It's not cheap by no means. So the best thing to do is just like building a house. When you get the foundation right, the rest of the house usually comes together right. So with that lawn, you want to get your grading right. We're going to talk about something today as far as land preparation, what you need to do, and how. And Jay's going to take that.
Yeah, so like what you were saying too, this is a big investment, especially if you've recently moved to North Carolina or moved to a different part of North Carolina. One of the many new houses that are being built in our area. Again, welcome if you're a first-time North Carolina resident. So yeah, building up a new lawn. That's kind of where we left off last week in our lawn segment here. Again, touching on what we talked about last week, I'm a new homeowner myself going through this, so we're all going to learn this together. So this page here that we're looking at here on the North Carolina State Extension, this is a lawn. This is all about lawns. This is something they've put together, and it's been a good resource for me too. So we talked about cool and warm season grasses, a lot of the different varieties of that. So we're going to continue on, kind of going into establishing a new lawn this morning. So number one, you want to make sure that your grade is where you want it to be. That's what Dad was saying, your good foundation.
Right. And one thing about grading a lawn, if you're going to try to do it yourself also, always remember that grading is more than just getting the area smooth or level. Grade is a way that you want your water to run, like your rains and all, and you always want that going away from each corner, each end of your house, so the water runs away from the house. You want it to gently run so you don't have washes and all. So when you're looking at grading and you're doing your landscape, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your house, and up against it is a little higher than the rest of your lawn. So the rains can gently uh, feather off or run off gently, not in a steep runoff or what. And again, if you've got hills and all, then there's ways that you do, when you do grade, that you take care of the water as it runs more in a gentle circle instead of a rushing circle and washes out and carries your topsoil off.
Yeah, and ideally you want to keep that grade that you're talking about feathering it. You want to keep that around the 2 to 3% grade away from your house. So that way you're going to avoid getting deep puddles of marshes, things like that, where you're not going to get a deep saturated area where no grass is going to grow, because you get something you're turning into a marsh. Obviously, grass isn't going to grow there either.
Yeah. Plants are just like humans. Grass is the same way. For plants to grow, prosper, and do what they need to do, they need the same thing a human does. They need air, they need sunshine, they need water, and they need food. So those are the things that we'll be talking about in some of the preparation today when you're prepping your land before you do seed it.
So whatever you're doing to grade, whatever you're doing this final, once you've got your rough grading done, the North Carolina State Extension, we're going to go down through here. If you want to follow along with us here, we got a tab called Establishing a New Lawn. So we're going to go right there. And, you can see right here in the site preparation. So you can go along and read along with this. And, at your leisure here, you can see the link up here in our web bar there. But the North Carolina State Extension, they do tell you that the best way to get a grade is by hand raking it. So in this age of having all these electric tools, and sometimes just good old-fashioned hand labor is hard to beat. Yeah. So you can feel it. You can see what's actually going on. You want to get all of your soil compacted. You want to get a good rain on it, or some kind of waterfall by sprinkling. You want to have a little bit of water in there to settle it. But you want to get everything below a pea gravel size piece. All of your soil particles, you don't want those to be any kind of large chunks, because you're not going to be able to let your grass grow through that. That little tiny grass seed's not going to be able to poke up through a rock.
All right. And there are tools now when people, professionals come out to do your lawns, they do have tools that will actually go across the ground, and it does pick up and move those bigger pieces and chunks. And then again, if you're on a new home site, you could find anything from pieces of the shingle or the roofing there. You could find pieces of 2x4 or wood, or depending on what type of siding's on your house, you could find brick chunks or block chunks, concrete where masons have cleaned out somewhere. And these are everything that you do want to get out of their yard. Number one, you want it to be level. Number two, as Jay said, you want it to be able to have a bed that the grass can grow and come up through. And number three, you don't want to start off with your lawnmower and those lawnmower blades hit something, you start throwing them through windshields and at people and everything else. So that's a good thing to look for. So you don't want to leave chunks laying around and different things like that.
Yeah, not only is that dangerous, that's also dollar signs too that's taken away from your nice, pretty green lawn. So
right.
But so going back to our site preparation tab here, if you look at number 4, they're telling us, if possible, mix 1 to 2 cubic yards of compost per 1,000 square feet into the top 6 to 8 inches of subsoil. If you are planting in heavy clay, which is what we are here in the Piedmont of North Carolina, or very sandy soils, which would be our coastal region of North Carolina.
Now, we recommend that you use our planting mix, Daddy Pete's planting mix. If you're working with the clay soils here in the Piedmont area of North Carolina, and even some, that clay is going to follow it up to the foothills and to the edge of the mountains. Well, and the reason we do that is with the planting mix, you do have 50% compost, you have 50% aged bark fines, which is pine bark fines, and that's going to keep a good aeration going on for your nutrients to go through. It's providing nutrients, and also it allows you water to soak in and hold that too for those lawns. And for some of these hot days, since this is the middle of May, we're getting ready to get on some of those hot days and hot long runs in the summer to do that. Of course, naturally, And the way that we would like to see a lawn plant is going to be in the fall around here. But the compost works well when you're on sandy soils in your coastal plains, when you're down on the flatlands of North Carolina on out that way, and when you're mixing with sand. That way there's no organic matter in the sand. The organic matter helps hold nutrients and also provides nutrients. So if you're in foothills on down to the coastal region, you want as long as you've got clay, you want to use the planting mix. If you're from the coastal area on to the coast, you want to use our composted dairy cow manure, which will add those nutrients.
Yeah, and piggybacking off what you were talking about on the planting mix there, this tab number 4 here, our clay soils are prone to compaction, and they require frequent aeration. So what aeration is removal of the soil cores that we were talking about earlier, your big chunks, your big rocks. Not necessarily a rock, but it's almost like a rock because it compacts so hard. So what we're wanting to do is bust that up. We're wanting a clay buster. So what we are going to do with that planting mix, number one, you're going to provide organic matter through that composted dairy cow manure that is in the Daddy Pete's planting mix. But you were talking about aged pine bark fines that is in this mix. So something that is important is you want your pine bark fines to be aged. So the reason you want that is it's not going to rob nitrogen away from your grass seed. Because you'll see here in just a minute when we talk about fertilization, you're wanting a good heavy nitrogen getting this thing started on a new lawn.
Yeah, and a lot of time if you go to some of the big box stores and stuff, we call our aged pine bark fines, when you see them in the bag, that's going to be our soil enhancer. Now, we call it a soil enhancer instead of a lot of times they call it soil conditioner at the box stores, but a lot of those have been bagged straight off the mill. They're green. A green fine will rob nitrogen, just as Jay stated, but ours have gone through that one heat. It's actually one that's been aged, and so you look for the bag of Daddy Pete that says soil enhancer, because there's times where maybe you just want to add aeration to it. Maybe the nutrition's good in your soil. Okay.
If you've already built it up,
Right.
You're not doing a new lawn if you've already have an established lawn.
So, and the thing with that is, if you want to do that, and another thing, the soil enhancer, if you want a real fine bark chip looking for a mulch, it works beautiful. So it has several uses there.
Yeah, and one more thing off of those pine bark fines here, kind of getting back to what we were talking about the clay. What that pine bark fine is going to do, they almost kind of act like little needles in a sense. You're getting in there, busting up that clay. That's what that's going to do. It's going to provide space into that clay and bust up that clay.
Right.
So that's what's going to make our way for our grass seed to grow. So that's why you want to put that in there.
And another thing too, you mentioned aeration. A lot of people use core pluggers after the lawn's established to keep that aeration going on. If there wasn't enough organic matter added to the soil, they have the type that it's no more than just like a spike that goes through, and what it does, it opens up the soil as you're doing. You do actually tear up a little bit of the lawn, but not enough to hurt. It'll spread back. Now, on your cores, you actually do, or pluggers, that's what they call them. You'll come out with about 3/4 to an inch. It goes down in and actually plugs the soil and leaves a little hole. Some of them can be as small as half to 5/8. Some of them is 3/4. It all depends on how big a plugger and what area you're using it in. And that's something else, but that is for an established lawn already, not so much for prepping the lawn.
Right.
Just to give you an overview of some of the maintenance. And this page with the extension does give you the same tips for your maintaining a good lawn. So it's not just for establishing one. There's also a good section there on maintaining the lawn you already have.
Yeah, so don't just take our word for it. We're reading directly off of this page and kind of tying in our knowledge of what we know about it and going along with it, but definitely continue reading on with the North Carolina Extension, this lawn page here. We can't plug this enough, how much good information is in here. So take it. It's free. All you have to do is type it in on your web page there. So definitely take advantage of it. Lots of good knowledge here. But we're going to slide on down here past the soil preparation page and kind of look at our fertilization page. So as we were talking last week, you want to take a soil sample. That's another thing. It's a great resource that the North Carolina Department of Agriculture provides its citizens with. You want to get that soil sample in. Now, this does take a little bit of time. So let's say here it is, late March, April, you're rushing, you got to get that done. You didn't take your soil sample. So they actually kind of provide you some guidelines here, how to get a good baseline if you haven't taken your soil sample. But obviously, soil sample is preferred because that's going to be like a customized solution for you and your lawn. So you definitely want to do that. Take the time, do it if at all possible. If you missed it this time, do it next year. It's never too late.
Yeah, and now here it is. It's May, so you have time to do that in the Piedmont of North Carolina, and you can do it a little earlier on the coastline, a little later on the coastal areas. But in the Piedmont, usually you're looking at sowing the lawn mid-September is usually a good time to sow it. Most of the time people use a fescue or some type of fescue, some of the hybrids. But go ahead and get your soil samples taken now. And when you do stop by your county agent's office or your extension office in your county, they'll give you a kit, has all the instructions to do that with. The reason you want to do that is you're making a big investment and you want to make sure you have the proper nutrients for this lawn to be successful. One of the biggest thing, I think there's two things that I see a lot is because people didn't take soil samples or they get into a routine every year. Well, I need to put on lime this year. I need to put on fertilizer at this time of the year. And yes, you may be doing all of that, but keep in mind, fertilize usually has three of the major nutrients, which is NPK, your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potash. And most times, we don't use all of that. The lawn didn't use it all up from last year. And I know we throw the nitrogen to it to get the greenness. But again, lime is something we do to change pH, and we may be loading our lawn and a lot of times our gardens and raising pH past points that it needs to be, which actually in turn, instead of helping the plant, it hurts it.
Exactly.
So that's the major thing you want to take the soil sample for, so that you'll know exactly how much to apply. And if you look at fertilizations when you go, I know a lot of people don't, but in this article it does explain it to you. You see a triple 19. Maybe you'll see a triple 10, 10, 10, 10 fertilizer. That was the old gardeners 10, 10, 10. Everybody used 10, 10, 10. But they have 5, 10, 10. Or they have 18, 4, 6. And that's no more than how many parts of nitrogen, which is your first one, your NPK. So if you look at an 18, 4, 6, you have 18% nitrogen in that bag. You have 4% phosphorus, and then you have 6% of your potash. Now, that may be what you need. That may be what you don't need. Here's the thing about it. Once you get that soil sample, it will tell you how much of nitrogen, which is the N, the phosphorus, which is the P, and the potassium, which is the K. It will tell you exactly what you need. So you may not need to go buy 18, 4, 6. You may need to buy a 2, 12, 12. You may need to buy a 5, 10, 10, or get as close as you can. Maybe your lawn doesn't need anything but some nitrogen on it for a top dress. This saves you money, and it also helps the environment because we're not overloading our soil with nutrients that the plant's not using and we don't need. So, number one, it's expensive. Number two, it's not good for the environment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important too that you want to fertilize before planting your grass seed. So, and the reason you want to do that, you want to think about like a cake mix. Obviously, you can tell by looking at me, I think about cake mixes quite a bit. But you want to make sure that you're getting everything combined, you're getting the right growing medium ready for that grass seed. Because if you just start throwing stuff out in one area or another, you start overloading one grass seed over here when this one's not getting any. So, you want to make sure you've got everything balanced, ready to grow. You're getting the best results possible, getting the best value for your money, especially right now in these economic times, especially with drought. You want to conserve your water in the best way that you can. So you definitely want to make sure you're getting the most for your money, getting the most out of your grass seed.
I've seen, and I've seen a lot of people do this, just like the situation we're in right now. We've had very little rain in the last 8 weeks here, but people like to top dress, and top dress is usually adding the nitrogen, or sometimes they'll add the whole thing, like I said, and they don't even know they need it. But they might come in and top dress with a triple 19, which is 19% of all the major elements, the three. And very seldom have I ever seen it where you needed to add the same amount of all three at the same time to any soil that I've ever tested or had tested. But the thing is, if you went in this year and you top dress with triple 19 and you don't have some type of watering system, or you don't have sprinklers and you're waiting on the rain, there's a lot of people now that their grass is totally with the nitrogen, it is actually just burning up the lawn. And you're going to kill an investment if you have that type of drought that's going on. The plant can't uptake it without water, so it's sitting there taking up a not a diluted form of nitrogen, but it's taking it straight on, and that's more than plants and their roots can handle. So make sure that if you're going to do top dressing in the spring without some type of watering system, or with your sprinklers. And right now we're all in the conservative mode on water, so people's not being allowed to. Make sure if you didn't take that soil sample to use a lower end fertilizer, or especially a lower end nitrogen like a 5-10-10. That helps, or if you don't have a watering system.
Yeah, so kind of wrapping up our fertilizer portion here. Let's say that you didn't take a soil sample like we were talking about earlier. So the North Carolina extension here, they're going to give you a guideline on how to build a good base. So we're going to be working with these measurements that I'm about to tell you are in a per 1,000 square foot section. So you're going to have to multiply that, figure out your acreage, multiply that by your 1,000 square foot there. So if you don't have a soil sample, you want to use about 75 pounds of ground limestone per that 1,000 square foot. So you want to get that limestone in there, get your good base like we were talking about earlier, get your pH balance right. And this is for heavier clay soils, heavier sandy soils, by the way. Forgot to mention that when I was talking about that here. But you also want to get in a starter fertilizer. Like we were talking about earlier, get that started. Get your cake mix going. Get your blend right. So your starter fertilizer, like we were talking about earlier, you can use 40 pounds of 5-10-10. You can do 20 pounds of 10-20-20, or 16 pounds of 18-4-6. A lot of 10s, a lot of 6s, a lot of 20s there. So, again, this is going to be dependent on what you think you need. If you've planted grass and somewhere you used to plant tomatoes and you were rolling the nitrogen to it, maybe use one, that 5-10-10 has a little bit less nitrogen in it. Kind of use your best judgment on that.
Well, I know we got to be ended up here because we're getting to the end. But let me say this and just give you an idea for everyone. And I know these figures we've thrown out to you this morning is just a little bit, could be a little bit just
intimidating,
and intimidating, whatever the case may be. But let me explain to you and put it in the layman's term. Because years ago, when I didn't know what was going on either, I thought, well, there's some numbers. Maybe that's a trade name. I didn't know, when I was 18, 20 years old. But again, this is for your three main nutrients that all plants require. That's your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potash or potassium, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And that's the percent of each one that's in the bag. Now, here's the thing about it. If you buy a bag of 10-10-10, you have 10% nitrogen, 10% of your phosphorus, 10% potassium. Well, what's in the other 70% of the bag? It's usually a filler, like a rock or some real fine rock or something like that. and it costs you X amount of dollars. What if you get a triple 20 or a triple 19, and just for figuring sakes, we'll call it triple 20, 20, 20, 20. Okay, you're going to use half as much as that per 1,000 square feet, as Jay said. Now, look at the cost. Usually, 20, 20, 20 is not going to be double the price of 2 bags of 10, 10, 10, which would equal that much, or double poundage to equal the 20, 20. Well, you can do half. Other words, just like they said, how many pounds did they say per square feet for 10, 10, 10?
Well, we got 5, 10, 10 at 40 pounds, which is
Okay,
close.
But that's fine. We'll still use 10, 10, 10 for
for
talking sake. Okay, if you're looking at 40 pounds, then you could use 20 pounds of 20, 20, 20 to do the same. Or if you want to go with the 5, 10, 10, then we'll go with the 10, 20, 20. And they do make a 10, 20, 20 fertilizer. So you would use, instead of 40 pounds, you would use 20. Then look at the bag cost, okay? 20, 20, 20 has 60% of the nutrients in that bag compared to 30% of 10, 10, 10. So that means you have less filler. You're only with 40% filler there. So you've got to do your cost on which one is the cheapest, which one works the best for you, and whatever. So when you're doing these things, again, if you'll look, the extension always gives you a couple different fertilizers, and the reason being, it all goes off of what your soil sample's saying, kind of match the fertilizer to that. But if you're needing the same amount to start the new lawn with a 10, 10, 10 or a 5, 10, 10, and the reason with the new lawn they're doing the 5, the low nitrogen, they don't want to burn on new grass or the new roots. Okay.
Yep. So now that we've established our new lawn, we've covered all of our fertilizer basics here. Just kind of wrapping up with this. You can come back 6 to 8 weeks later. You can see right here where it says for seeded lawns. 6 to 8 weeks after your grass seeds have emerged, you can do about a pound of slow release nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. You want that slow release to be anywhere between 25 to 50% of it to be a slow release. You don't want to sit there and burn everything up. Your warm season grasses, they like that little bit of extra nitrogen, but if you're not careful, you got a cool season grass, you'll throw the nitrogen to it, make it more susceptible to disease, and you'll burn it up.
And that's where our Daddy Pete's dairy compost comes in. An organic fertilizer or the nutrients that's in our compost, they do release slower. Okay, they're not as higher on the NPK scale, but they release slower. So you could actually top dress and have success and not worry about burning with our Daddy Pete's dairy compost. And so that's always an alternative to a commercial fertilizer. That's things we want to do. But I think we need to wrap this one up, Jay.
Yep.
We've just about covered most of it, and hopefully we have given you an insight on where to go and what to look at and what to do. Again, you can always go to our webpage, which is daddypeace.com, go back through our podcast, our YouTube videos, or ask us that question. And then...
Yep, so we got this new part of our lawns, starting new lawns wrapped up. That might be something we come back to maybe later in the fall. We might come back to, maintaining your lawn a little bit later. But, if you're listening to this now, you've got the resources. Check out this North Carolina State Extension page, and not just for lawns, for whatever you're doing in your gardening and, with your animals, anything agricultural for the hobby farmer, for the homesteader. It's a good resource. It's a collaborative group of people. It's not just one opinion. It's a collaborative group of people that have studied this extensively. But with that being said, we're going to get into the Jay's Place part of things there, starting my lawn, making some videos with that.
And that's probably going to be more this fall, too.
Yep, we'll get into that.
But also remember, wherever you listen to our podcast at, make sure that you do like it, subscribe to us, and that does help us know what everybody's doing, ask those questions. I think you can find us on Apple, on Podbean,
Spotify, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe so you're not missing any of this content that's coming up.
Well, we sure do thank you for tuning in today here at Daddy Pete's. And I guess we'll see you the next time.